recording paused or stopped near the end, let me know. We typically do that so people can speak freely and it isn't necessarily posted out to the world to see. Because we do share these with other members who could not attend, as well as eventually they'll become live feeds on our YouTube channel. As you know, you have joined today the Rural Community Health Worker Network, RCHWN, meeting people where they are at. Just to get some business out of the way, our CHW store is live. We do have a lot of new products in there. We are looking at adding some other new products. I'm always open to suggestions. Our annual conference and retreat is fully planned and is actually looking right now. We have about 55 participants in attendance. It is going to be held in Gulf Shores, Alabama, with the Mobile County Health Department as a partner, April 13th through the 15th. If you would like more information on that, please visit our website at rchwn.org. And you can click on the conference tab. It'll tell you everything you need to know, or feel free to reach out to me at rebecca@rchwn.org. Our 2023 membership campaign is up and running. If you refer a colleague or a fellow CHW friend, there is a gift for you in it. Also, for our new members and renewals, it's $25 a year. That includes every learning collaborative that we do every month of the year. It also includes scholarship opportunities to other conferences, as well as networking between other organizations such as NASHWA, MISHWA, and other state associations. You can also learn more information on that. And as a little tidbit, our CHW is always looking to share who we are and how we can partner or collaborate with other CHW organizations and associations. So if you are a member of one of those other organizations and associations and you feel that a partnership or collaboration would be good there, reach out to me. I do presentations on our education, the sharing of the IMCHW, and different things that we offer our members. I truly do look at us as being a collaborative being, not a competitive being. I would like today to introduce, and I really don't want to say your last name wrong, Mikayla, so I'm not going to say it, unfortunately. But Mikayla is a leader at NASHWA. She is from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and today she is sharing her lived experience and her CHW story with us. And she sees herself as a fighter and a survivor. I had the privilege of meeting with her yesterday and learning more about her, and I hope you guys greatly enjoy what she shares with you. She has an amazing story. It is inspiring, and all of our journeys are different. And if there is something about her journey that inspires you, that makes you want to do something different or branches your experience, I am so happy to be able to share her experience and her story with all of you. And I thank you so much, Mikayla, for being willing to present to our members.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you all for having me. It's so great to be here with you guys. It's my first time at the RCHWN. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to share this opportunity with others that are just like me. So like Rebecca said, my name is Mikayla Trujillo. I'm a certified peer support worker and a certified community health worker, and the new leadership development manager at NASHWA. And my presentation today is telling my story on lived experience to becoming a CHW. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm wondering if we can get some engagement from the audience, if we can put in the chat, or if you guys want to come off of mute, what brought you to become a CHW? I'm going to lead in with the question. And I have the chat open so I can see anybody's responses. This is just a really great opportunity to kind of see where you relate with your peers, where you guys have similar experience. A new job in 2020. Awesome. So if you started that new job, Sarah, in 2020, that was right at the beginning of the pandemic. So that must have been a very challenging experience. Coming straight into pandemic readiness as a CHW. losing my brother to suicide. Senior services in Michigan, and felt like it was beneficial to have the skills to better understand our clients' needs. Yes. Right. Well, as you can see here, guys, that there's a lot of lived experience, a lot of indirect lived experience, vicarious lived experience, if you would, that brought us to become CHWs. Rebecca and I were talking yesterday, and we very much like the quote that says CHWs are born, not made. Next slide, please. Right, and some words or phrases you might hear me say throughout the presentation. One is lived experience, and that just means that it's personal knowledge about the world gained through direct firsthand involvement in everyday events rather than through representations constructed by other people. And then you may also hear me say peer, which is a person who is equal to another in abilities, qualifications, age, backgrounds, and social status. Anybody could be a peer with lived experience. Anyone who's experienced any kind of social inequities or health issues, including cancer survivors, COVID survivors. I heard somebody say they had COVID. You now person with lived experience for COVID, right? All right, next slide, please. So let me take you through the timeline of how I got this lived experience. So from 2009 to 2015, I was a juvenile. I was gaining lived experience. I was diagnosed with substance use disorder by the age 16 for opioid use. I was involved in lots of mental health therapies. I had justice involvement. I was very much in survival mode and trying to navigate community resources that were pretty much being weighed down on me. I didn't know, a lot of them were forced resources. So definitely learning how to navigate those and seeing which one would work for me. That took a lot of time. All the while I was in the midst of drug use and incarceration. By 2016, my mother had passed away, and I entered the Department of Corrections. I was sentenced to 2 years on a 4-year sentence out of a 4-year sentence. And I thought my life was over. I really couldn't see life after incarceration. Through that time, I had some ups and downs with my sentence, and I had ultimately a pivotal moment where I decided that I didn't want to live in like the regular community houses in the dorms, if you would. But I wanted to go to a program, something that was more structured, something that had rules, something that was going to motivate me, and something that I could learn from. So I completed an intensive outpatient program in prison. And after that, I applied for an opportunity to become a peer mentor within the prison in 2016. And in 2018, I was released. I began a career as a certified peer support worker. And in 2020, I received my training and education to become a CHW and began my role as a CHW. And then in 2021, I was working as a program coordinator at the University of New Mexico. I was advocating and still am advocating for state certification for myself and others with lived experience. And I began leadership within the National Association of Community Health Workers. Next slide. All right, so just as I had mentioned in the timeline, a lot of things were going on from between 2009 and 2015. I had received my first mental health diagnosis, which was not really, it was a label that I hid behind for quite some time. When a professional at such a young age tells you, you have manic depression, you have anxiety. I spent a lot of my years trying to self-medicate and fix this. But what I feel like should have actually occurred is understanding what those emotions and feelings mean. So if you think about it, depression just means the feeling of being sad, and anxiety just means the feeling of being uncomfortable. And those are absolutely normal emotions. What I didn't know how to do was cope with those emotions. And I think that that's probably where, clinics and mental health professionals kind of lacked in that part, was teaching me how to cope with these emotions. And so I spent many years being just as involved with this mental health diagnosis, and very, very deep into opioid use disorder at a young age. I received my first treatment, which was a lockdown facility of substance use disorder at the age 17. And again, this was another kind of traumatizing environment. I had never been exposed to some of the other things that these youth were being exposed to, such as treatment foster care. That was also my first time being put on heavily on prescription medications and psychotropic medications, which was not a benefit for a person at my age. By age 18, I was forced to navigate not only medicated assisted treatment resources, but just welfare resources such as food stamps, bus routes, you name it. I had to figure out how to do it pretty much without any experience or help. And I think that all of these things is what prepared me to become a CHW. Next slide, please. All right, so as you can see here in the picture, this is me in the Department of Corrections in New Mexico, and pictured with me is my spiritual mother, Renee Chavez, and she is the co-facilitator of the peer classes I mentioned, and she's still my support system to this day on the outside. So I was sentenced to life, not death. I used my time incarcerated as a platform for personal and professional development by utilizing scarce resources in prison, such as GED, training, creative opportunities for peer classes, small case management tasks, such as reentry planning, resource navigating, peer parenting classes, which promoted health equity, and New Mexico Department of Corrections' first ever week-long reentry conference, where inmates were able to meet with representatives of community organizations to make an informed decision on reentry planning. I was talking to Rebecca yesterday, and like I said, I was only there for 2 years, but I was seeing the same faces, the same women come back to prison within those 2 years. And I started to think to myself, what could be causing this? And I kind of had like a soft interview with some of them, like, well, why'd you come back? And then I started to hear more often than not that these were choices that they made being misinformed. Like, so the difference between a transitional living house and a program. Some ladies didn't know the difference in the requirements of what was needed for those pieces, and they ended up essentially violating their parole provisions. So with that, I created a small needs assessment, which I had already witnessed the need for a women's parenting class in this facility. I have very visibly witnessed a woman's heart break as they are, standing in orange, and they receive legal mail that the rights to their children have been terminated, and women were feeling hopeless, and it was causing them to react in other ways in our dorms and things, right? So that you're mad because of things that are going on at home, and you start causing fights, things like that. So it was definitely a need that I saw, but it was something that was reassured through this needs assessment. And we almost had, by majority, almost the whole facility said, yes, we want a parenting class. So go ahead and next slide. We'll talk about the parenting next slide. Awesome. So in these photos here, you can see the left photo is actually, don't ask me how I got these photos out the prison, okay, guys? But just know they made it out. So to the left, you can actually see footage of my graduating mothering class. And the woman pictured farthest to the left, or yeah, that would be my left, is actually pregnant with a child in the womb. And this was another traumatic kind of scenario to walk with her through, because when you're incarcerated and pregnant, if you are not released by your delivery date, you have less than 24 hours to bond with your baby before you have to find either a relative for the baby to go to, or it is the state gets involved. So just imagine giving birth, holding your baby in orange, having to give it back, and then go back to your cell. So these are just so, it's so meaningful just to have these photos and this representation of all these women. I am proud to announce that I have stalked her on Facebook, and she is successfully reunited with the little baby that was in her belly here. And I just check up through their photos. Sometimes I don't say anything or anything to them, but I just check on, like, that's my baby. So she was reunited with her family after completing and graduating this class. The photo to the right, this is the gender-specific reentry class. So again, focusing on women. So women pictured in the back row, they had successfully completed supervision and have found meaningful employment in our community. And some of them work with us, some of them are peers, and some of them are just doing positive things within the community. So I'm so proud to share these photos with you all here. Oh, I see the reactions going off. Sorry, guys, I was minimized. Thank you for that. Next slide. Yes. All right. So now we find ourselves in 2018. The year is 2018. I was released on May 30th, 2018. So that's my freedom anniversary. And 2 weeks following my release, my father passed of mental health suicide. I did see someone here on the chat mention that they had a loved one who passed away from suicide, so I can also relate to that. So during this time, I didn't really, it was another pivotal point. It could have been a breaking point. A lot of my family was kind of waiting for the moment that I was just going to drop the ball and kind of go back into victim mode, and that didn't happen. I managed to be strong for everyone and kind of go into robot mode of everything that needed to be done to take care of services for my dad and make sure that my family was in the best mental health and emotional state possible, which has taken some definite work. We're all at different levels of grief, and we understand that, but we definitely have all taken our paths to try to heal from those pieces. Just a month following that, I was introduced to community leaders at a small community-based organization called Albuquerque Center for Hope and Recovery. And they really had no reason to hire me other than a bunch of good word of mouth. I could see now, reflecting on it, just how much of a chance they took on me. You know, recently released from prison, a year of parole hanging over my head, could be back in prison at any given moment and leave this community-based organization in a tight spot. But people believed in me, and that's all it took for me to believe in myself. I connected with those community leaders. I was trained and certified as a community peer support worker, and I was employed as a job developer. And that became my passion for helping returning citizens find meaningful employment. So not the gas station, not Subway, but something that they could really create a career path for. And I used experience from their time being incarcerated and just amplified it in their resume to make them feel very confident about the time that they had spent doing what they were doing. So for instance, if they had spent time working in the kitchen while they were incarcerated, you now have knowledge of, commercial kitchen use machinery and X, Y, and Z. And just those things were just making people feel so confident. I also did mock interviews. We did plenty of rehearsals of how to answer the question if you have a background, and how to answer that properly and turn your weaknesses into strengths. So this is where I finally began to plant my feet firmly into community and build this lifelong network. All right, I think we can go to the next slide. So following that, I had a further calling to a CHW. And I was telling Rebecca yesterday, this kind of was landed on my feet. Our 30-year experienced promotora de salud was getting ready to retire at this very, very small 8-people community-based organization, right? And she selected me to pass off the community health worker title to. So I had mentorship, I had training while I was able to be supported through work to go to training. I also had on-the-job training. I had an on-the-job mentor who really helped me problem solve, understand casework, understand the social determinants of health, understand steps to overcoming the social determinants of health. And I still call her to this day. Actually, fun fact, guys, she didn't get to retire. They called her out of retirement, and she's now the co-associate director of the community-based organization that I've been mentioning throughout this presentation. So she didn't get to go out, live happily after yet. So I was longing for something further. I wanted I made a lot of discoveries and similarities of my life experiences to the case management positions. And I was just so eager to put my hands in the masa, the dough of being a CHW. So I stepped into the role before I had ever completed the training. And I was actually awarded the plaque to the right for the work I had done within the first year. And I was also introduced to NACHWA and was able to share the introduction of NACHWA with a 17-year-old intern who I had at the time. And this 17-year-old was about to be duly certified with her high school diploma and her community health worker certificate. And I was struggling at getting her to make relations of what kind of foundation she was building for herself. So I actually accepted NACHWA's interview within the terms that they would also interview my 17-year-old intern and ask her the same questions about being a CHW. What does it mean to you? So that she could kind of narrow down her future and become focused on the career pathway that she had set out for herself. So I think that was super special. Next slide, please. All right. So when I was first introduced to NACHWA, I was actually introduced by still a mentor to this day, Paige Manking. She's a board member. And I was so nervous. I didn't know if I would find a voice in this group of national leaders. And I was even more nervous to commit to membership. I didn't know what I could offer a group of sophisticated CHWs from across the US. But within the first 2 months, I found a place in survey development, thanks to Denise and the previous program manager, Jane. I did a lot of listening before I spoke up in any meetings, and I heard things that I had valuable contribution in discussion with, such as diversity and policy making. I then moved into a role as a program coordinator with the University of New Mexico, which was also a 3-year goal of mine. And I dedicatedly met with NACHWA every month to hear the work being done in the many communities that NACHWA represents and offer expertise whenever possible. In April of 2021, I was formally denied on the state level for community health worker certification. My heart was broken to hear that once again, leaders in my community did not accept me. And from that day, I pledged to advocate for the many peers with backgrounds that I directly and indirectly supported to hold a meaningful place in their communities and carry the CHW title with honor. And it's with all this that I'm here sharing this story with you of hope with you today. Next slide, please. And now we are at fate. So on Christmas Eve 2021, after months and months of appealing decisions, I actually went through a full-on legal hearing where I acted pro se on my own behalf against a New Mexico State District Attorney for my community health worker certification. And it was through my resiliency and my healing of this trauma that I was able to sit and be discriminated against, re-traumatized, and basically re-sentenced for crimes that I had already served my time on for this piece of paper. But it came as just the perfect time and the perfect present on Christmas Eve, 2021. The New Mexico State Department of Health approved my community health worker certification. During that same month, I was offered a position and hired as the full-time capacity building coordinator with the National Association of Community Health Workers, which was also a 5-year goal of mine. So funny enough, let me tell you this part. So I asked Denise to create a letter of reference, a letter of recommendation as an advocacy piece for my community health worker certification. And mind you, like I said, I had only met with Denise monthly, but when I read what she had wrote down on this paper, I was in tears. And I just remember being on my phone and replying to her email. And I said, if there's ever an opportunity to work with you in the next 5 years, I'll be there. And she was like, 5 years? How about next month? How about I need your application in 2 weeks? How about you have we're interviewing next month, so be ready. And I was just blown away. Nashua has been my home ever since. I love working remotely with the people that I see, that I know, to have so much care for community health workers. It doesn't matter what role these people are in. They are thoughtful, caring, and uphold our values to the highest degree when it comes to community health workers and our members at Nashua. So I'm so proud to be with them for a full year now and have grown into the leadership development manager position just this year. And I am continuing to advocate for people with lived experience on a national level through macro level learnings and survey data findings. Next slide, please. Right. So how do we support others in turning their lived experience into community health workers? Now that you've heard my story, I can't sit here and say that this is the formula for transitioning any person with lived experience into a community health worker. However, it is the bare minimum of what is needed. People with lived experience have been counted out of many opportunities, and we have low self-esteem, low confidence, and need lots of support. We need to be listened to transition from a past way of living to the next step. But the best part about the work is that it can be done, and we do recover. Next slide. And I want to leave you all with a quote, one of my favorite quotes, and that is, people with lived experience are often closest to the problem and closest to the solution, but often furthest from the resource. And if anybody wants to share your thoughts about the quote above, I'm happy for you to come off mute or drop it in the chat. Thank you. Oh, I'm reading some of the feedback in the chat, but thank you, Rebecca. Yes, I honestly, I'm forever grateful for the opportunities that I have received since I was incarcerated. People who didn't have to believe in me believed in me, and that's all that it took. And I consistently share that gift with others. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for I have a staff of 12 now, and they're all amazing community health workers from across the US. I mean, Alaska, El Paso, I mean, Michigan, we got Michigan, I got 2 in Michigan. And I have to push them sometimes, and I push them past their comfort zone. And I always just kindly remind them and reinforce the fact that I believe in them. And that was something that was so hard for me to understand in the beginning, why people believed in me. But that's all it took. And once somebody believes in you, you start believing in yourself, right? So, and things start happening. Andre is here, yay.
I just have to make a comment that I just really appreciate your candidness with this whole journey that you went through. And I just like the idea that you were not going to give up. You weren't going to just take what somebody else decided to judge you by. I'm glad that you fought it and you have gotten to the point where you are now. I just think that that's an incredible role model for other people that find themselves in the same types of situations. And I know that it's so difficult for people who have been incarcerated to get beyond that, especially when it comes to, like you said, meaningful employment, that it's great to have somebody that is your advocate that can stand behind you, that's gone through the same things that you might be going through right now, that can assist you with getting through that and coming out positively at the end. So you're an inspiration. So congratulations on all your hard work and effort.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Katie, did you have a question?
Thank you all for all the reactions. I did see the screen going up, so I appreciate that. That was awesome.
So in your past, so I'll ask questions because
Yeah.
I'm curious now. So in your past, when you said you help people get meaningful employment, when you gave them the praise or the recognition of who they were. I know last month we had Amber Mullen present. She was also incarcerated at one point in her life and then became a CHW. She made the comment that she used to tell people, you can use what you did in prison. They don't have to know you did it in prison. It's
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
experience.
I worked for the state of New Mexico. Doesn't that sound fancy?
It does.
And that's the same thing that the cops and everybody else has to put on their resume too. So how would they know? They will never know, right? And yeah, so I think working with returning citizens, we talked about this too, or I think I was talking about it with Andrea yesterday. The workforce, um, it's really a catalyst, and it's not set up for success. There's so many things that come up when you're coming out of incarceration. Like, first of all, you have absolutely nothing. You're usually depending on donations, gift cards, things like that to find clothes, hygiene, socks. On top of your living situation, you do have to leave prison with a transitional living plan, a parole plan. Sorry, that was rude. So you have to leave with either some kind of contract that you're going to your family's house or you're going to a program or a transitional living home. Some of those programs can be pretty costly with here in New Mexico, which is probably nothing compared to what you guys go through, but it's about $500 a month for rent. You top that with the fees you have to pay your PO, and you can never really get ahead working at Subway, working at the gas station. You can never, so it's usually set up where people are going to fail. And I think that so many times we get caught up with like, I will do anything, I will work anywhere. But then I started like sitting down. I'm like, well, where do you want to do this? And all of a sudden, here come the no, 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 no. And so I never asked them what you want to do. I would always ask them, tell me what you don't want to do. Because it's so much easier for me to eliminate what you don't want to do. Like if working outside is a complete no-no for you, great. Let's take away all of those ones and we won't even go there. So I think it's so much easier to identify what you don't want to do sometimes than where you want to work.
I'm going to sound very uneducated on this, but that's okay. Are in different states, I know different states do different things. Are there like programs in some states where employers are willing to hire, or they say that they're willing to hire like newly released incarcerated?
Yeah,
Are there
absolutely.
programs?
So A major federally funded program such as like Goodwill, you've got Workforce Solutions, Workforce Development, all those places that are supposed to do that. But somehow their success rate is very low most of the time. I actually went to a reentry workforce conference and I met some amazing people with lived experience. And so I would actually shamelessly plug in. The homies got like this LinkedIn. Dude was incarcerated. He's like famous now. And he was incarcerated and he got his education, just started. He's a very technical kind of guy, right? So when he got out, he made this app. And this app is basically the equivalent of jobs.com or Indeed or Glassdoor, but it's specified just for felons. And so this it takes away all the guesswork, and a lot of what takes people with lived experience down is how many times they get told no. I'm a resilient person, so you could tell me no as many times as you want, but I'm gonna get you to say yes eventually. But some people can't handle that, and that's when they start going back to that victimization. The poor me, I'm never gonna be anything. Nothing is ever gonna work for me. But anyway, so he made this app, and it takes all the guesswork out of that. He only has employers that hire felons, and on top of that, he even has data that shows how likely you are to be hired with if you like check a couple boxes and be like, okay, I have an aggravated assault in my background, whatever. It will show you how many people with a similar background have been employed by this company. So I know like Coca-Cola has thrown him a bunch of pesos so that they can get in there because they hire. And so that's kind of where he's going with that. So that's a very interesting thing. There's plenty of like career gateways, if you would, that happen in prison, but none that really. There's certification programs. So there was like cabling and tech. But I would have definitely used the peer mentorship as a career pathway if I could have uplifted one while we were incarcerated. Like I was in it, but it was just happening, right? And the Department of Corrections was like, oh, cool, we got an extra teacher for reentry. We only pay her $1. So definitely creating that as a career pathway, creating community health workers as a career pathway, ministry, so many other different outlets and avenues for justice adjacent folks.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions about her lived experience, about things that you want to ask her, or questions about NASHWA? We do have her for another 15 minutes about, and if we end early, that's okay too. We'll stay on. I just wanted to open it up to the floor if there's anything that anybody has on their mind, or thoughts or questions, or maybe a question of how do I get to where you are? How do I direct myself there? Who do I reach out to? I am actually going to thank you for your time right now, Mikayla, and I'm going to shut off the recording. And whoever wants to hang around and turn on your camera so we can put a face with a name, or you just want to talk about your day or what's going on, let me tell you, I have an ice day. It's amazing. So I will shut off the recording now, and whoever would like to stay on, great. If you need to get going, that's okay too.